Hello everyone, good morning and good afternoon. My name is Neeraj Periwal. I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at eFolder, and I'm your host for today's event. Welcome to the eFolder Partner Chat. This webinar series brings together leading eFolder partners for business-oriented discussions. Today we're going to talk about how to manage and recover offsite backups. Today we're joined actually not by one, but two people. First we have John Wrynn. He's a sales and marketing manager at Corstar Communications. And we have Joshua Chrisman, who's a sales engineer here at eFolder. Now, before going into today's agenda, let me go over a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available on eFolder's YouTube channel. And we're also going to make a copy of the recording and slides available to everyone who is attending today's event. Now, with over 100 people registered for today's session, we put all participants in listen-only mode. You may enjoy the audio portion of today's event by either streaming it on your phone or dialing in over your phone or streaming it over your computer. Now, we encourage questions throughout the event. We planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's discussion, but you may submit your questions as we go along, and we'll try to get to them on the fly. Now, today's presentation, like any good presentation, follows a logical flow. After introducing our guests, we're going to go into a discussion about why on-site backups are not enough for MSPs and their clients. We're then going to review the cloud-based disaster recovery options available to MSPs and talk about how they work. Then we're going to hear a few case studies from John and Corstar Communications and learn how his MSP has used cloud-based disaster recovery. We're then going to provide some advice for MSPs who are new to in-the-cloud virtualization, and then finally answer any remaining questions during our Q&A session. Now let me introduce our expert for today, Joshua Chrisman. Joshua Chrisman is a sales engineer here at eFolder. Prior to joining eFolder, Josh worked at Aperture for 2 years during the acquisition by Dell. He started in the accounting department and managed the licensing of Aperture before finishing in the support department. He then joined at eFolder as an account manager before transitioning to his role as a sales engineer, which he now works in that role. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome.
Thank you.
And next up, we have John Wrynn. John Wrynn is the sales and marketing manager at Corstar Communications. Previously, John worked at a network consulting firm, and then he worked with Corstar Communications on a backup project. He then joined Corstar Communications, where he created and now manages the lead generation program that helps the MSP acquire new clients. John is also knowledgeable in DDR and manages Corstar Communications' implementation of backup and disaster recovery. John, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to you as well.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, so why don't we go ahead and get started by kind of learning a little bit more about your company. Why don't you just tell us about what makes you special and unique as an MSP?
Okay. We were founded in 1970 or thereabouts, back when there was mainframes. The company transitioned to smaller servers and workstations and, the computers we have today. We have a wired services division where we do infrastructured wiring. We have 2 full-time schools we support with employees, and the bulk of our business is managed services with small to medium-sized businesses, pretty local, even though we have some in New York and further reaches. But we're in Westchester County, and we do managed services for, of close to 150 customers.
Great. So in addition to DDR and backup, What other managed services do you provide to your clients?
We do basic networking infrastructure support. We provide help desk for some customers, just help desk level. And then for a lot of clients, we provide server support, security, firewall implementations, and basic management and proactive support using the managed services processes.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Thanks for telling us a little bit about your company.
Okay.
So, let's start talking about the topic we have here today, which is all about offsite backup and recovery. And, when you're talking about this, we have to first ask ourselves, well, why aren't on-site backups enough? Why do you need offsite backups? So, we've thought of kind of 4 ways to think about this. One is that, client expectations have really grown in the last few years. Clients are more and more dependent on critical business applications that run oftentimes on the server. So, there may be a dentist that's using something like Dentrix to manage all of their customers and or patients and all of their data. There may be an accounting firm that uses some other line of business application, and again, they rely on this data. So not only are they dependent on having the data there, but they're dependent on having that data available anytime, no matter what happens. And so outages and downtime simply aren't an option for a lot of clients, and so they need something that will provide them 24/7 access to their data no matter what happens. Another thing that makes it so that on-site backups aren't enough is simply a poor strategy to have all your eggs in one basket. Again, in the case of a site-wide disaster or an outage where maybe your power goes out or the hard drive in your server fails, you definitely don't want to have everything, a single point of failure. You want to be able to spread your risk across multiple locations so that if, God forbid, something happens to your on-site backups, you're not completely hosed. The third reason why on-site backups aren't enough is there's an increasing need for regulatory compliance. So, many clients are subject to things like HIPAA or PCI and SOX, and oftentimes these regulations require that data be available at all times, and there's no real tolerance for downtime. So it's important then to have offsite backups available. And finally, the all too important 3-2-1 backup rule. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with this, it's kind of an industry-wide term that kind of talks about how there's a need to have 3 copies of your data available at all times on 2 different types of media and have 1 backup offsite. So, having only on-site backups obviously would not allow you to satisfy the need for that 1 offsite backup. And, following the 3-2-1 backup rule in general is a really good practice to ensure that no matter what, data is never too far away and it's never permanently deleted no matter what. So before we get into the meat of today's topic, which is all about how to recover, how to back up offsite and recover that data, we want to introduce one of the key BDR services that eFolder makes available to all of our partners, and that's what we call eFolder BDR for Acronis. Now, eFolder BDR for Acronis is a complete backup and disaster recovery service that combines the power of Acronis backup software with the massive storage and recovery capabilities of the eFolder cloud. Now, as I'm going to talk about later, we actually have 5 different flavors of BDR. We've partnered with a number of different image-based backup softwares, so that partners, no matter what they use or no matter what they're comfortable with, can use the BDR solution best for them. But today we're going to be talking primarily about eFolder BDR for Acronis. Now let's walk through a few key features of eFolder BDR for Acronis. So first off, we've got very flexible deployment options. So for those of you who have your own BDR appliance already and want to kind of leverage that, we allow you to do that, and we give you a pretty simple way to configure your existing hardware to work with Acronis and to work with our cloud. Of course, we also allow you the option to buy hardware from us. We're happy to give you hardware if you'd like to do that. And if you have just a single server and you just want to back that up, we offer a single server deployment, which a lot of our partners find really convenient. Now with eFolder BDR for Acronis, you can do not only image-based, but also file-level backup. So really it's up to you in terms of what is best for you and your clients, and we kind of let you choose whatever's best. eFolder BDR for Acronis offers global deduplication and forever incremental dedupe-aware replication. So, for those of you who don't want to worry about having tons of duplicate duplicate data flying around, floating around, you don't have to worry about that with BDR for Acronis. We also offer separate on- and off-site retention and agentless virtual backups on Vmware and Hyper-V. Now, this is a kind of an interesting diagram in terms of how it works. And Josh, since we have you here, if you wouldn't mind, can you walk us through kind of how BDR for Acronis works?
Sure. So in a normal best practice deployment, you're going to have your protected machines backing up to an on-site appliance for local virtualization and accessibility to data. And then within that backup, the AMS that's running, you're going to have two different backup plans that run. You're going to have a local backup plan, and you're going to have a cloud backup plan. And then from there, you'll have options for recovery in case of disaster. So we certainly can ship you a disk with all of your data. We have a Delta Dash account, or we can overnight a drive to you so you can perform VMware locally with their data on a drive. You can certainly download it with a recovery task from the AMS console, or you can use our Continuity Cloud node. And the basic gist of the node would be you'll have RDP access to a Continuity Cloud node. You'll access the AMS console. You will then access your data within the storage node that exists in our data center and perform a recovery from that node to that physical box that is in our data center that's running as a Continuity Cloud node. And once your machines are virtualized, you will give your end users remote access into those VMs that are running.
Great. One question I have for you, Josh, is with BDR for Acronis, does it work any different than any of our other BDR flavors?
Yes. The general idea of getting credentials to a physical box is the same, but each of our solutions recovery process is a bit different, whether you're using Shadow Protect or Replibit and Veeam as well. So they all are a bit different.
Okay, great. So yeah, just as Josh explained, you've got the ability to recover from the storage cloud, like a big download or disk shipment, or you can do emergency in the cloud virtualization and recovery if you want to have us provision a node for you in the Continuity Cloud. And this can come in handy. Corstar Communications is going to walk us through a couple of case studies, but in general, whenever there's a risk of extended period of downtime, maybe there's a site-wide disaster, or there's tons of data and you don't want to wait for it to download, you don't want to hog up that bandwidth, or you don't want to wait 2 or 3 days for a disk to arrive at your doorstep, then in the cloud virtualization recovery is a really great option. So, let's kind of get into our case studies here, or kind of the way that you've used it, John, at Corstar Communications. So what were some factors that led you to adopt eFolder VDR for Acronis in the first place?
Well, we had a relationship with another corporation that we were doing just straight file backup with. And we had issues with the recovery process and just the overall solution not working. So we reached out like everyone else. We did some searches on the internet. We found eFolder, and one of the reasons we went, or one of the factors that helped us determine whether we should go with eFolder was there were different availability of different software. In other words, you could use Acronis, you can use StorageCraft, you could use Aperture. You have people who are versed in all the different software, so if you need assistance in either implementation or recovery. So that was one of the key factors. The Acronis piece too, also one of the marketing programs that eFolder ran. They had a pretty decent bundled price for Acronis, and price was a bit of a factor. And we picked up some licenses because we had to move forward and move a bunch of clients over to off another existing platform. So that's how we started.
So other than the pricing, I mean, were your techs more familiar with Acronis, or were you more comfortable with Acronis, or what made you pick it over, let's say, Shadow Protect? Yeah.
Yes, I would say that being familiar with the application, having used it before, using some of their desktop products helped, and then also, which kept us on track, was the support we received when we were when I was doing the moving of the existing clients over. So I had a pretty decent list of clients that I had to move from an old platform to a new one. So the tech support guys were really good. And made it easier. So I got assistance if I ran into something. Instead of doing an hour of research to find an issue, the tech support guys would log in, give me a hand, would show me what went wrong, give advice on some real world advice as to how to move forward, depending on the server setups. So the technical guys at eFolder are, the majority of them are former MSPs. So they have a background in Exchange Server implementation, Active Directory implementation. So when you start talking about some of the stuff we'll get into later with the recovery, the advice of the technicians, besides just knowing the software, the just overall technical skills was very helpful.
Awesome. Great. And so once you adopted Acronis for yourself, how were you able to convince your clients to adopt a VDR solution?
One of the interesting changes in BDR, disaster recovery, as a break-fix organization, or if you're in a fully implemented managed service provider, the subscription basis has taken a big ticket item on the front end with a whiteboard demonstration, which your customers don't stay awake for. And it's taken it down to a monthly price. And when you start to talk about if something happened on site, if there was a disaster, some of the local disasters that we had also made the conversation a little easier to have with a customer after Sandy and a few big disasters. And I think those factors made it easier to talk a customer into moving to a solution. Price and local events, and also cloud becoming a more of a universal word for customers to understand what you meant.
Right. So every MSP is aware of a lot of the consumer grade backup services out there like Carbonite and Mozy. So how do you counter if a client were to come to you and be like, well, why can't I just use Carbonite? How do you counter that kind of opposition?
Well, in my approach as a salesperson, you need to have a story to defend that that response, and you have to educate the customer as to what the difference is. So you have to create some analogies that make sense, so you don't get into a cost conversation. So, like, in other words, if you would say, if you want to go get your oil changed in a car, it's okay to go to a drive-up center because the oil change is not a complex mechanical procedure. But if you had an issue with the engine running bad or the engine sounded like it needed an overhaul, you'd want to go to your trusted mechanic, not just some random storefront and pull up. So I try to use that kind of analogy. You also have to build a trust relationship between yourself and the client, where you are providing a next level of expertise, where there's trust and they understand that you're providing a higher level product than one of the consumer ones you just mentioned.
And do you discuss things like RTO and RPO with your clients, or do you kind of try to go to stay away from that kind of technical
Yes.
gibberish?
No, you do that, and I think, again, instead of using the acronyms that a lot of people do, we're all guilty of it. I think the best thing is to ask them questions, get them to participate in the solution process. Ask them, well, how would it affect your business if you were down for an entire day? Would you lose a lot of money if you were down for a day? Would you be able to function without your computers or access to your files for a full day? And and then how much would that cost you? And then provide, well, if you went to a solution where you had a backup on site and off site, your recovery times could be as short as 4 hours, as opposed to something that was straight in the cloud. If you had to download it and just go over the different, client, you just have to set the expectation of recovery times.
Right. Okay, great. One more question we have here on the slide is about pricing and packaging. So, how do you typically decide to charge for your solution?
Well, the ideal way is if you could just get it into your full MSA package or your managed service, whatever your managed service agreement is with your clients. If you don't have an all-in or a whole, there's different models, per workstation, per server, per user, typical MSP packaging. You need to put a value on the results and not get into similar to what you were saying before. Don't get into a price war about Mozy Pro costs this and your product is going to cost me this. I would use the fact that if you bought the product up front, whether it's Acronis or Apashore, you're into the 1,000 plus per server rate, and then tell them that because of the new subscriptions that are available, we could go on a monthly rate and come in around the 100, 120 per server, something like that.
Right. Yeah, and then there's also the whole pitch that you as the MSP will manage it for them. If they have any issues with Carbonite or Mozy, they have to call up somebody, and they may or may not be available. They may only offer email support. So definitely having that local piece of that local contact would definitely help.
Yes.
And then one final question in terms of pricing. Whenever you do have to do some kind of in-the-cloud virtualization, do you guys charge separately for that, or do you kind of just say whatever kind of recovery we do, we'll include it in the monthly price?
We do charge for that, and the margins aren't really there to absorb that. But you need just a learning curve is like you need to make sure you set that expectation with the customers and let them know that if you are in the cloud, there's going to be some sort of cost involved for several days or a week in the cloud for whatever reason.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's important. That MSPs kind of explain to their clients that in the cloud virtualization and recovery is, it's not enormously difficult, but at the same time it does require some time and labor, and so it's probably appropriate to charge for that. Have you ever encountered any kind of client opposition, like, hey, I don't want to pay for that, I thought it would be included?
Yeah, you do come into it, and I think one of the ways to do that is to bill quickly for it. In other words, while they're still realizing the amount of work that they assisted with or were part of the pain process, I think you need to, one of the tips I would give is you should immediately bill for it if you're going to create an invoice for a recovery, either recovery work or time to be in the cloud. You should bill as quickly as you can.
Awesome. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and let's hear a couple of case studies that you guys have to share. I think it'd be really interesting to hear exactly how real-life clients benefited from this offsite backup and recovery. So let's hear about this restaurant services company.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we were hosting an Exchange server at our location, at our offices in Westchester. The client was, 10, 15 miles from here. And we had a data issue that was caused by a hard drive problem. So we were pretty sure that it was an electrical issue because the primary and one of the backup drives I had the data on both went bad. So the attempts of recovery failed locally, which is usually not the case, but we had it. And then so now we're initiating a disaster recovery. So we contacted, you contact eFolder. They provide a server in the cloud. They spin it up, and then the application is then you go to do a restoration, and then a restoration goes up to the cloud server. So we push the data over the cloud. We got the Exchange server up and running. We got it to boot. And then based on my discussions early when I talked about the experience of some of your technicians, we had a little issue with not having a proper domain controller up on the same piece. We had one here and we created a tunnel to it, but it wasn't quite responding as it should have. So with some of the technical support guys at eFolder, we brought a domain controller and we transferred it up on the same cloud server as the Exchange server, and then the Exchange started behaving properly, and then we initiated the recovery procedure.
Cool. And how long did you keep the client's data virtualized in the cloud?
Well, in this case, we decided as we were doing the recovery process, that we were going to move the customer over to 365 for several different reasons. The customer had expressed an interest to do it. Of course, all proposals were met with, delays because, they didn't want to spend money on the services. So now this event happened. So we brought them over to a 365 solution, and then the recovered Exchange data was then pulled into PST format, and we updated their 365. So we probably had the cloud piece up a little longer than you normally would. I think we might have had it up for a full week, but we did all that PST recovery piece. But the client was pretty solvent, or ready to do business, like after a day, once we got it up in the cloud, once we got it cooperating.
Cool. And then you, I guess you, like you mentioned earlier, you made it a point to build a client, pretty much as soon as, or right after everything was set up properly, so that it was still fresh in their mind.
Right, and then at the end of the process, we took advantage of having the disk shipped back to us, so we would have an on-site copy if we needed to, get back to the data, get back to it. So right before we canceled the cloud, we had it shipped to us in a disk format.
That's kind of nice, so that if it went down again within a week, you may not have to provision another node in the cloud.
Right.
You may just be able to rely on the disk shipment. Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. I do see a few technical questions in the log, which is great. We're not going to address them right now, but we will make sure to address them during the Q&A discussion at the end. So please keep submitting them, and we will get to them later. But let's move on now to our second case study here, ambulance company.
Yes, so we had like a Citrix server that we were backing up, and they had 2 or 3 different billing locations that remoted in using the Citrix server to bill. So this server crashed, and the people couldn't get in, and they couldn't do any kind of billing, which becomes an issue right away because they can't, it affects the company's cash flow. So we could not get the backup to work locally, and we decided to continue to try to get the backup to run locally, and while doing that, also at the same time initiate the cloud server up in the with eFolder's continuing cloud. We did that as soon as we got the cloud up and running and started to push the data up. The local version of the backup came back online. We continued with the local restoration, and we kept the cloud up for probably not a full week, but for 3 or 4 days, and just in case we had to change or if the local version didn't work, but it did. So in that case, the local version worked.
Awesome, cool. But this is great, and we love hearing from you. So we've got more questions for you. So the first is, how do you determine whether a client needs cloud-based recovery during a disaster? Do you consult with them, or do you kind of determine it for yourself based on what they told you before?
Well, it's basically you're going to go with the technician supporting the account, or myself in this case, in 2 of them, or the technicians I'm working on my side of the equation. So like in the second case scenario with the ambulance corporation, I felt that we had an issue. It was an issue on our end, a technical issue on our end, and I felt that to run in parallel to start the cloud-based recovery was something we should do in parallel. In other words, instead of continuing to look at the local issues and continue to get an error or a failure of recovery, I thought that to run in parallel and have the cloud-based process starting was good. And like I said, I just let it run after we, corrected the local issue. So I think you need to assess the situation, work with the customer, work with what services are not rendered, okay? Because servers, besides access to folders and files, provide services, whether it's an application the customer needs to run or not. So if the customer can't bill, if the customer can't, if it affects customer cash flow, I think you need to up the priority and make the decision using that criteria.
Right, and it is good, I think, to centralize that kind of decision making at your level, at the MSP level, because you generally know what's best for your clients, and that's why they trust you to do what you do. So
yes.
So second question, I guess you've already talked about how you leveraged the the disk shipment from eFolder for that one time after you provisioned the continuity cloud node. Now, have you ever, downloaded a bunch of data from the storage cloud, or, is that something you haven't had to use yet?
Yeah, we've done that. I've downloaded, like substantial folders and brought them down through the eFolder software system you provide. Your file and folder backup software you have. We've used that. And in one case, we actually had a customer who there was a legal issue, and one of the courts wanted a copy of the backup. So what we did is we asked for the disk copy of the backup, and it was delivered to our office, and it was delivered in a Pelican hard case with a zip tie on it. And when the district attorney's office showed up to recover the data from one of our clients, I have to tell you that the case and the Ziploc on it was very impressive to them. It looked like, a spy case, but it showed the integrity of the data, and it also showed that it was not open. So a little side note on that, I mean, the district attorney's office was impressed with that. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, we just had to deliver the data that way.
Always good to impress somebody younger than our partners.
Yes.
Great. So, we talked about this before, where I guess you generally take a very consultative approach with your clients. But what would you say is the average RTO and RPO for your clients?
I would say, in a local event, it could be as quick as 5 to 10 minutes, obviously, with the backup. I think what you need to do when you discuss, the time objectives and the data objectives as to how often it's been backed up, and, if we do recover a backup, is it from the day before or is it an hourly backup? What I try to, the discussions I have with the customers is the smaller either one of these numbers are, the more expensive it usually is. And for reasons of software cost, where you need, if you're doing backup every hour, you need a software, obviously, that can back up open files and open data, which obviously Acronis can do. And then the time of recovery, you need to explain having an on-site appliance and also a backup cloud piece. But I try to incorporate that. If the time to recovery is smaller and the availability of a snapshot being 15 minutes to an hour during the last backup, those within price, and there's more monitoring involved also at that level.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And final question for you. How is adopting a BDR solution benefited Corstar Communications?
Well, I think what the BDR solutions do, obviously, if you can always bring another line of business to a customer, obviously it'll generate another stream of revenue. That's always a plus. I think it also brings up another point of discussion for an existing customer, and it also shows an actual perceived and understood benefit. Unfortunately, most times the BDR solutions benefit is not realized until there's a disaster. So there's a little time of really, stress and anxiety. But if you can pull it off and do the recovery, it becomes a case study or it becomes a win. Most MSPs provide services based on proactive monitoring and maintenance, and we do it remotely. We can log in and fix all these things, but a lot of times the customer's like, well, you haven't been here in a month or two. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good thing, but they don't perceive it as a good thing. So, unfortunately, when you do a disaster recovery and you bring the customer back online, that's seen as a win-win, especially if it works, obviously. But so I think, visits, describing new solutions, I think that's why it's benefited our business.
Great. Yeah, hopefully it does work, or else we'd be in a lot of trouble. But
yes.
Great. So let's, I love the idea of a partner chat, and I'd love to just keep this partner chat going. So what's some advice that you have to share? I mean, I know we wrote a few down, a few ideas down, but
Right.
What would you like to share with our audience? Some best practices or anything else?
Well, I think the one thing you need to do is, depending on who's on the call, if you're not the technical resource in your MSP, you need to get the technicians heavily involved. You need to leverage the technical support that eFolder provides. And they also have a trial of the Continuity Cloud, where they'll actually put the cloud up and get it ready for you, and then your backup goes in the cloud, and you can actually spin it up and test it. I can't stress that enough. The first time you do this, you don't want to do this when it's a disaster, because look, there's a lot of moving parts. It's not going to work perfect. There's going to be issues. Anyone who does this for a living knows that. I don't have to convince, you have experts on the line here. But I definitely would say you should leverage the free trial. Work with the tech support guys. They have experience there. Most of the guys have done this. They've been managed service guys before. So they have other experience too. They don't just know how to click on software and spin stuff up. They have some worldly experience. So I would establish a relationship with the technicians, try the free trial, and same thing, when you're setting up the application, if you're using the Acronis, get on the phone. They can log into the application, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because you'll get advice, not just software help. In other words, it's not going to be, a file load and a process of how to set it up. There'll be advice to how to make the local backups a little different, because they're separate. So the local backup runs, and the separate backup to the cloud. So you want to set them up differently. You want to stagger the times. How you do the backups and the roll-ups, and when you do a full incremental, they'll advise you on that too. So that's my advice.
Great. And then when you do that free trial, when you take advantage of it, do you like show it to your clients? I mean, do you do a demo in front of them, or would you rather just kind of show them in kind of a PowerPoint?
Well, I haven't done it. Yeah, I haven't done it where I've showed it to a customer. I think that's a great idea, because it's always nice to have a little show and tell, obviously. But we did it with the technicians here, and just did it as a proof of concept. But I think yes, and because it'll stay up for a while, you should test it, and then show the customer. It's not a bad idea, because they can remote into it, so you could show them how to get in, and show them that their server resides somewhere else. I think it would be a great proof of concept to them.
Cool. Great. So Josh, do you have anything you'd like to add? Anything you'd like to say?
No, I think John pretty much hit on all the speaking points of this.
Okay, great. Sorry, there's a little bit of ambulance here in the background. Welcome to San Francisco. So just let that go. So, we here at eFolder, we really have a vision for what we call the open cloud. We know that SMB needs are rapidly evolving. 7-8 years ago, nobody had really heard about file sync. Things like Dropbox were unheard of. And now everybody's using it, and now there's a need for managed file sync. Maybe 10 years ago, a lot of people were using tape, but now MSPs and their clients have realized the benefits of a PDR solution. So SMB needs are always evolving, and we realize that. And the IT services that you as an MSP provide to your clients obviously have to evolve as the needs of your clients evolve. So what we've done is we've actually partnered with 5 different image-based backup software vendors. So today we talked about Acronis, but we've also partnered with Dell, with Aperture, with Replicate, with Veeam, and with Sheltertech, StorageCraft. So what we've done is basically we've said, look, different MSPs have different needs. They have different pricing strategies in mind. And so rather than give just kind of one solution and good luck fitting your business model and your technical knowledge into that box, we really want to just open up as many options for our partners as possible. So we partnered with all these different software vendors, and we paired the power of that software with the robust capabilities of the cloud. So our eFolder data centers, we have 4 of them. two in the U.S., one in Canada, and one in Europe. And we kind of logically divide up our cloud into three kind of, clouds: storage, compute, and the continuity cloud. So we believe that we have a really cohesive vision around VDR that pretty much no other vendor in the channel can really match. And we really strive to enable partner success and client happiness. So now, now that was our pitch. Let's kind of go into questions we have here in the question log. So there's one question here from Mike. He asks, I'm already an eFolder partner, and I need to know if I can use the VDR cloud solution to store Shadow Protect backups, but without using a local VDR on-site. So we use Shadow Protect and install it directly on the client server, and we store the backups on the NAS. Can we push those to the cloud just using the cloud storage? Josh, do you have any insight into that?
So currently, we require you to use our Shadow Protect licenses with some sorts of local backup, VDR, NAS, USB, whatever, and then you'll have the cloud backup process using our file folder solution. At this time, we don't have a setup to go straight from cloud for your existing local backups.
Okay. Let's see. So one question here from Giovanni says, let's see. So we currently have some clients on Shadow Protect V5 standalone. We want to move them to a SaaS solution. Would it be better to move them to eFolder VDR for Shadow Protect or eFolder VDR for Acronis?
I think that without having some more details, it's hard to answer that. It's too many variables to determine which one would be better over the other. You could certainly let Carmen or Neeraj know, and then they can forward me your information, and we can discuss that later.
Yeah, Giovanni, if you wouldn't mind just shooting me an email, I think my email address will be up at the end of the webinar today, and I'll be happy to forward it to Josh and get you, in conversation with him. Let's see. So Giovanni actually he mentioned something else that's sort of interesting. So he says, my view on the continuity cloud is that a customer usually has experienced a major disaster like a fire or flood, and they usually file a claim with their insurance company, and they can include the cost of continuity cloud as well as new hardware in their insurance claim. So I've never thought of that, but yeah, I guess that's something where you maybe can tell your clients that the costs they incur due to a natural disaster may be able to be recouped from their insurance company. So great insight. Thank you for sharing that, Giovanni. Let's see. Henry asks, does VDR for Acronis integrate with ConnectWise or Check?
So not directly. We do have our new Acronis monitoring tool with our file folder solution that monitors the AMS and will report events and usage on the local AMS. You then can integrate with Autotask and ConnectWise from our partner portal, which is our single pane of glass. That's kind of what your backups are doing. And you can configure those to generate tickets. It wouldn't be as granular as some of our other solutions, but it would at least give you tickets for failures, if that's what you're looking for.
Great. William asks, a certain eFolder competitor does a test of each system image in their virtual environment. Does eFolder test and verify the system image backups in the cloud? And if so, how?
So we don't send screenshots, if that's what you're asking. We do have our silent data checksum process that's running, and it's a proprietary algorithm that runs, and we basically hash out data and store it in different locations with multiple versions of that data. And based on the algorithm, if a version goes corrupt or bad, we simply replace it with another version of that data. And this is how all of our solutions are processed in our data centers. And it's a very reliable solution with no memory or data loss from this algorithm that's been running. But we don't do screenshots if that's what you're asking.
Right, but I think we should mention that even though we don't do it with BDR for Acronis, with BDR for RepReview, we do offer screenshot verifications of booted up VMs. Right? Am I not correct, Josh?
No,
so,
you're correct. You're correct at a local level. We don't do them in the cloud though. So at a local level, you do have the boot VM check screenshot verification.
Cool. Okay. Let's see. John is asking, what's the difference between the compute cloud and the recovery cloud?
There's no real difference. It's just the processes that are running in our cloud to be able to compute your data with our checksum process. And the recovery cloud is simply what we're calling the disaster continuity cloud. They're all the same cloud. All the processes are handled in the same location.
Great. John, here's a question for you from Rajaya, I hope I said that correctly, who's asking, do you guys do cloud backups and on-premises backups?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, always good to have, your data in multiple places.
Right, and we do go to two different mediums if we can. Like sometimes we'll have space on a server that's not a production server. If we've just repurposed or, upgraded a server, we'll keep an old server on site and maybe put like a data store there. And then what you can do is you do it to either, a NAS device, a QNAP, or, I have one customer, I even put it to a USB attached drive. I mean, not the slickest solution in the world, but if the server fails, you can take it to a workstation and you can recover because it gets immediately detected on another machine. So, if you can get it on local, two different places, and then up in the cloud, that's always you can't have enough backups,
And just to point out, Acronis does have second location redundant options, as well as continuous standby options if you have a host laying around where you can send reverse incrementals to, as well as the cloud. So it's all built in.
It's actually at the end of the It's actually at the end of the job. There's actually a line, and when you set up the job, that you just click the button. It says second location, so you don't even got to recreate another backup job. Is that what you're talking about? And you just put it in. You can have a second deposit after it runs the job, right?
Correct. Yep. Just redundantly sending the data to two different locations. Yep.
Right, and there's you don't have to recreate the backup. Your retention schedule, which can be a little bit of a chore to get it done, and you need to understand it too. So I have a lot of people who think, well, it's a lot of work. Yes, but you need to understand why you're doing a full, why you're doing incrementals, and then differentials. Understand the difference, and then, like Josh just mentioned, at the end of that job setup, there's just this place you could just have it go to a second location, and all your settings apply. You don't have to create another job.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that the original location has a different retention. The second location can have a different retention, and then the cloud job can have a different retention. So you can have different retentions in all locations.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Cool. Let's see. Here's a rather technical question. I think great for you, Josh. What's the best practice in terms of storage configuration for local backups? Is it ISCSI or UNC path?
It's not really going to matter. You can use any option locally, as John mentioned. I mean, you can go out to a share through a UNC. There's going to be no best practice. It's you're kind of at the mercy of what the client has and what they're willing to pay for. So if you can get a local backup, that's any local backup is going to be best practice versus not having one.
Great. See, a question here from Keith. When partners sign up with us, do they have to pay for cloud access only when needed, or is it paid monthly whether used or not? I assume Keith is asking about the Continuity Cloud.
Yeah, I assume the same thing. So we don't charge to have the ability to use it. That is, the ability exists for all of our partners. We only charge if and when you need to use it, and it's just a weekly rate. And we have 3 different size nodes that you can choose from. They're basically revolve around storage size, and you can talk to your account manager or someone on the sales team to get pricing on that.
Great. Let's see, question here from John. He asks, in a situation where we need to recover a local server to the cloud, how do we connect the local network to the cloud environment?
So it's detailed, but at a high level, we use a pfSense virtual firewall where you can configure. We have public and private IP addresses available where you can configure your DNS to point back to the local environment, set up RDP, IPsec, etc. And we have instructions within the Continuity Cloud node on how to perform these functions as well.
Awesome. And a small note from Geo, who comments that ISCSI can be on a dedicated VLAN, so it doesn't impact their production LAN. So hopefully that helps the partner out there. Great. Well, I don't see any more questions. Or sorry, one more question from Geo, and then we'll go ahead and let you get back to the rest of your day. He asks, what VM technology do you use in the Continuity Cloud? Is it Hyper-V or Vmware?
For the recovery, it's going to be Hyper-V for Acronis.
Got it. Okay. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for these questions. They were really, really insightful, I think, and I think they demonstrated a lot of interest, so we really appreciate that. I want to do a small plug for something that we call the eFolder Business Continuity Playbook. So this is a giant marketing playbook that we've created. It is chock full of different marketing and sales collateral that's rebrandable and reusable by our partners. Things like white papers, pre-written blog posts, an ebook, a video that you can put your own name on to talk about the benefits of business continuity, a brochure, and a lot more. And we want you to take this playbook and really take all of the collateral in it and make it your own, and then share it with your clients and explain to them why they really need a BDR solution and why they should get it from you. So we're going to be sending out the eFolder Business Continuity Playbook to everyone who attended today as our little thank you. So look out for that in your email in the next few hours. So again, just thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. A very, very special thank you to John for providing his insights. John, we really appreciate your time. And, of course, to Josh for providing his technical insights into eFolder BDR for Acronis and our other BDR solutions. So, Josh and John, thank you so much for being here.
Not a problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I hope all of you have a really great rest of your day, rest of your week, and hope to see you on the next webinar. Have a good one, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
Right. Bye-bye.